What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Quarters Podcast. We haven't done one of these in a while, so we're mock drafting it up. We're going to be going through kind of, at least one round here on YouTube, 2 rounds here on the podcast. We're going to be talking about kind of the player movement. We have a huge trade with Geno Smith going over to Randy's Raiders, so he's going to go over there and see what that looks like. As we start seeing these dominoes fall, that's when it's fun to start mocking it up because there's a lot of consensus right now. Now we're starting to see a shift here. We did not have a quarterback going to Las Vegas in this one anyway, so it doesn't really matter. We're going to be talking about that, going over kind of our favorite picks, our least favorite picks. Randy reached a lot in this one, so you'll be able to see that firsthand. And we'll dive into it here at the Quarters Podcast. All right, so we'll go through the first 4 picks here in our mock draft. Randy had the first pick at 1 with Tennessee Titans. They took Abdul Carter, edge out of Penn State. I had a second pick. I took Cam Ward, quarterback out of Miami for the Browns. Travis Hunter went at 3 to the New York Giants. And then at 4, we had Mason Graham getting in there for the Patriots, which we'll get into that. Mason Graham, I've seen him drop a little bit based on kind of the combine and what you saw there. But no quarterback for you at 1, right, Randy? You took Abdul Carter?
Yeah, I think they are clearly looking to do everything they can to not take a quarterback at 1. You released Harold Landry today to kind of reset your edge room. I think it's pretty set clearly what Abdul Carter, whether that's at 1 or they trade down and then just take best player available. And I think they double dip at edge rusher in this class. And they're just focused on rebuilding a lot of the problems. I just don't think they've truly fallen in love with either of these top quarterbacks. Yeah. Maybe they've fallen in love with one later and just want to help develop. Maybe they're going to sign one of these 50-year-old veterans. Who knows? But it seems to be pointing that direction, and Abdul Carter just makes the most sense as arguably the best player in the class.
Aaron Rodgers
and
the Titans. Yeah. No, I think Carter makes sense. I do think we do have one total trade in this mock draft, by the way. We made one trade and then we forgot to do it. So we'll get to that later. But I think there's a chance that the Titans try to trade back, knowing that they kind of their GM kind of talked about they are going to take a generational player if there is a generational player. And then he mentioned that there might be multiple generational players in his view. So in my opinion, that won't be a quarterback. That would be Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter. And maybe trading from 1 to 2 or from 1 to 3, you're going to get one of those 2 players. So that's where I think they might do that. But if they can't find a good trade partner, Abdul Carter to me is the best pick here.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind it. You take best player available on the board, right? It was one of Randy's best picks. Of course, it was the first one. And you're looking at that with Abdul there. I took Cam Ward at quarterback for the Browns. They got to do something you can say kind of, Kirk Cousins. I hear that, but who knows what the Falcons are even doing with him? Who knows what the free agent market's going to be? And you kind of just need to reset that QB position. And I think the way they position themselves, I feel like QB has to be their pick. I don't know. I try not to understand the Browns, but it feels like the QB, they got to really address that need there. And I don't know if a lot of people love the quarterbacks in this class, but it feels like this would be a class that no one likes quarterbacks except for the Browns. Like the Browns be like, yeah, that's our guy. He's our one here, and he's at that pick there. So I'll take quarterback there. I think that, they're in a kind of a weird spot as a franchise, though, still, in terms of just what's going on with Myles Garrett, what's that rebuild look like? Kind of, they said they're not going to trade him. I think that's going to play a huge role in who they draft. Like if Myles Garrett's gone, then that's going to maybe play a role there, especially if Abdul doesn't go a 1, right? But right now, on the face of it, I'll take QB there and kind of go there. Any thoughts on that, Randy, before we go over to Travis Hunter?
I feel like they've already enacted their plans. They restructured Watson. They talked Bitonio back in. They're still fighting to get Garrett back in. I think they've already kind of expressed in the building what their plan is. And I don't know if that is the rookie quarterback. I don't know if that's rookie quarterback and a vet. So they know they have someone that can start. They might be bringing back Jameis as a locker room guy and drafting a guy like Cam or Shador here at 2. I think that makes sense.
Yeah.
I think Fields makes sense. There's plenty. Obviously, Cousins makes sense just because of the coaching staff and the play style. It's obviously a perfect fit because it's the offense he's always run. Especially when he can plant off his plant leg. So hopefully that's the case for Kirk Cousins next year. I know he's meeting with Arthur Banks to discuss his future in the next coming days. Hopefully that just lets him be released. But for the Browns here, getting the quarterback that can make the most plays, has the biggest arm, be able to cut through the wind at every city they play in division, at least until they do get the dome in Berea. So I think Cam Ward is the smart pick of the two. I think he can just make enough plays and play within enough structure. I do think he can get the most out of a few of the players on the Browns.
Yeah. Berea is a suburb of Cleveland for folks who aren't local. There's a big outcry.
Berea Taco is like pretty much I think it's called a Berea Taco, right? Or no?
No.
I don't know, but the other thing I was gonna say is it would be really funny if they go out get Kirk Cousins before the draft and then draft Cam Ward and then Kirk Cousins has the Michael situation all over again. That would suck for him, but also he would win that, I think, because of the type of offense that Kevin Stefanski wants to run. So certainly the Browns aren't in a good spot. I think we've said that pretty much our whole lives. The Giants also aren't in a very good spot. We haven't said that all of our lives, but we have been saying that for quite a while. And when you have a team that's not really in a good spot, I know that this general manager is kind of on his last legs here, Joe Shane. I'm still going with Travis Hunter. I'm going with best player available. I think that they need a true cornerback one. They need some potential juice on offense. I don't know. We're going to have a Shedeur Sanders talk here shortly. I just don't see the league viewing Shedeur Sanders in the same tier as Cam Ward based on what we've heard kind of coming out of the combine. So I just don't know if they would take Shedeur here. So instead, I just took BPA, kind of like what Randy did with Tennessee.
Yeah, I mean, they have a glaring need at corner. They have a glaring need at wide receiver too. It fits both needs. I think for the Giants, I think it's what we talked about a lot. He'd be 70% corner and maybe like just passing down specific wide receiver, at least for the beginning of his career. We'll see how it all shakes out. But I think he easily makes an impact. It's one of those can't miss picks like they did last year. I think you pick the best player on your board at the time. I think this is a team they're clearly either going to trade up to one and pick the quarterback they definitely want, or they're picking a veteran up. There's no way this coaching staff and this GM is taking a chance at someone being there at 3 for this draft because their job is 100% on the line this year. They have to show vast improvement and win games.
Aaron Rodgers.
I mean, that's they just feel like a veteran QB type of thing. And then that's going to be the running joke on the show. We're just going to say Aaron Rodgers for every QB opening because they're just hey, Aaron Rodgers, they'll fill that need. Yep. Aaron Rodgers there.
Except for the Jets.
Yeah, we say that at 7.
Yeah, well, let's get through the next 4. So at 5, we had Will Johnson out of Michigan, cornerback going to the Jacksonville Jaguars, who just moved Christian Kirk, who just cut Evan Ingram. They really could be all across the board there, or depending on what they're going to do. Tyler Warren could be in play possibly. Maybe they go wide receiver. I don't know. I think they have a really glaring need at defensive back, though. So I took Will Johnson there. Ashton Jeanty goes to the Raiders at 6. And I think that's interesting now that they brought Geno Smith in, Brock Bowers. It could be interesting in terms of what that offense looks like. Shedeur Sanders goes at 7 to the Jets. So the Jets get their QB of the future in Shedeur Sanders sitting there at 7 there. And then Tedero McMillan at 8 to the Panthers. I think these are all fun picks. I don't see them all the time there. But let's talk about Shedeur. That a good fit for you when you're thinking of that, Chris? We're going to go to Christian first. Randy made the pick, but I want to see what he says about Randy's pick here.
So that's kind of I just don't know if the league views Sanders as a top 10 pick at this point. But when you're looking at like all these teams that need quarterbacks, there is a chance that he goes. And I guess when you're bringing in a new regime entirely in New York, there is a chance that they just are completely sold on a quarterback. Now, I don't know that the infrastructure is there. The Jets' offensive line really isn't that bad. I think that would be the best offensive line that Shedur's played with. They do have Garrett Wilson. They have Breece Hall. Like, there is some stuff there. The defense should still be really good. They should be able to kind of improve it through the draft. They're going to lose some pieces this year, but I don't know. I don't know if Shedeur Sanders is. I think he's ready to play, but I don't know. Randy, why'd you pick him? I guess.
Because this is a spot. First of all, I think a lot of the time the Jets are going to go into this kind of draft, assuming there's a good chance neither of the top 2 quarterbacks are there at 7, whether they like it or not. And I can't fully tell if Shedeur is going to be somebody that Aaron Glenn is going to love or absolutely hate.
Yeah.
But I understand that there's definitely a possibility that they are just going to be 2 competitors that gel and have a common vision for this team. I think this is one of the teams that Shedeur went all out for in every interview. I think he's going to impress at the pro day. I just think this is one of the landing spots that makes sense. And it's also a landing spot that makes sense for a veteran quarterback. They already have Tyrod. I think they could roll with him too to start. I think this is a Russell Wilson destination. There's multiple things that make sense. And you got a head coach that I think will get the best out of your defense, even with losing a few pieces. I think you can spend the rest of this draft getting another weapon on offense, another offensive lineman, focusing on getting value on defense and hoping to build it through that way. I think Shedeur could thrive in this situation with this particular coach. I think this is someone that they could, like him and his father, competitors, they could mold together, gel together. And I can pretty much guarantee Aaron Glenn doesn't hate Deion Sanders. I'm sure they would get along and have a lot of fun conversations. And this is a quarterback that I think could handle the New York market, which is huge.
Mm-hmm.
I love this pick, Randy. I love it. So I was just being a
2
dick.
for 2.
But I really like it. Well, I didn't like your 4th pick with Mason Graham. But Shedeur,
talk about it.
Yeah, we're getting into Shedeur. I think this is a great pick for him because I think that the weapons abound and that offensive line is better than what people give him credit for. And I think that the weapons around him, Garrett Wilson would be perfect. I think Garrett Wilson would fit him really well there. I think that Breece, I don't know what the hate on Breece is. I've seen a lot of hate out there. I think it's a fantasy hate more than an NFL draft hate and an NFL hate.
Bit of a down year.
Sure,
but the whole offense had a down year.
But hey, Aaron Rodgers, right? We just keep saying that. We just use that name as a noun, or a verb. I don't know. I'm a history teacher, but like if you're using it different ways here, like he definitely struggled last year. Shedeur would fit there, and I actually think Shedeur would do well with New York media. I know we hear that joke a lot, but he might be that perfect guy to be like, hey, I'm just an asshole. I'm being an asshole to you guys, but I'm just going to play football. And like I think maybe that would work. Weirdly, I think it might fit. Like obviously if he goes out there and as an ass, like throws 4 interceptions, there's that type of things that might bite him because he might come back at him and battle them. But I think that's a good fit for him. I think it's a good team. Aaron Glenn's a stud. Like I absolutely think that he could build a positive culture like Tomlin. Like these are the things that you like to see that he could probably do there. And I think it's still the Jets. So they're still at there's still, Woody Johnson's still the owner. But I do think just from a perspective of like fit, I think it's fun. I think the Jets would be interesting there in that spot.
I'm going to make a quick free agency prediction. Aaron Glenn got cooked by Justin Fields for like 3 years in a row when he was in Chicago, or 2 years, I think is how long Aaron Glenn was there getting cooked. I think they're going to sign Justin Fields, but I don't think that's going to prevent them from, if they do fall in love with Shedeur, I think that could be a nice little bridge situation. In the mold of like Darnold McCarthy.
Yeah, it's the fun part about that is what we're hearing, the holdup of him re-signing with the Steelers is he's not sure that they won't draft a quarterback. So then going here, them drafting a quarterback would be like a bit of a slap in the face, but I'm sure Aaron Glenn would be very upfront with that kind of thing.
Yeah, but also Justin Fields has been slapped in the face by the Chicago Bears many, many a time. So
well, at least his offensive line. But we'll see how that all shakes out later in this draft. But yeah, I think it's a fit. A lot of these picks, I think the Michigan guys at 4 and 5, they're guys that are falling down the boards because they didn't fully test what they expected, or in Will Johnson's case, didn't really test anything. So it's kind of hurting the draft stock. But again, in this class, they are still some of the best players. You might just say that in other classes, a slightly undersized, just stud of a D tackle might not go top 5, but in this class, he should. Yeah. So that's kind of the mixed bag there. And same with Genty, a running back at 6, a lot of classes you'd be, why are we doing this? but it's Ashton freaking Genty, and the Raiders have a good offensive line, and just before this was made, but just got a brand new quarterback that can throw the ball.
Yeah, I got lucky there.
Let's talk Ashton Genty. Raiders at 6. If you pair him with Geno, Brock Bowers, that becomes a fun offense. Like, I think that's more fun than we've seen Raiders offense in the past. I am a noted Geno Smith hater, so I will just put that out there. But I do think Ashton in that offense is fun. Is that why you took him there, Christian?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's also a chance that the Raiders hold off on the running back, and they have Chip Kelly at offensive coordinator. He just saw Travion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins firsthand. I think there's a chance they want to target one of those two early in the second round. But in this case, like, can you imagine Ashton Genty and a Chip Kelly called offense? That would be an exciting thing, in my opinion. So I went that route. I just think Genty's worth the top 10 pick. We saw Bijan Robinson. We saw Jahmyr Gibbs go super early in that draft. I think Gibbs was a 12 overall, I think is what it was. Yeah, we saw that happen. We're going to see it happen again. It sounds like we'll get later in this draft, but Omarion Hampton's still in that realm. There's rumors that some teams have Hampton first on their board, and I'm calling bullshit. I do not think that that's going to be the case once they turn the film on, but I think the Raiders need something like this to really control games. That's been one of their problems over the last 2 years. They can't run the ball. They need to be able to control games, defensive battles that Genty can probably handle. I know he's a smaller back, but he can probably handle 20 plus carries a game because we've seen him do it. So,
yeah, I mean, it makes sense. And it would fit with the Chip Kelly offense where we can lean on the run, but also focus on the pass, especially because you have Bowers, you have Myers, and like Scott. There's really not much else. I mean, you have positive chain movers on the outside and then a dominant back. It makes sense. I still think they could easily bring in someone else to pair with him, and it makes complete sense, and you can run 30 times a game and not have a problem. But yeah, it's a fun pick for sure.
All right, so we had 8 picks here. Abdul Carter went at 1, Cam Ward, Travis Hunter, Mason Graham went at 4, Will Johnson goes 5, Ashton Genty goes 6 to the Raiders, Shedeur goes to the Jets, as we mentioned, and Tedero and McMillan to the Panthers. Anybody else before we move on to next picks, Christian, that you want to kind of shotgun it here or talk about?
I mean, Ted McMillan was an interesting pick. We kind of had a conversation when you made the pick, Kevin, and you're like, I mean, how can the Panthers pass up on a wide receiver? Looking at what they've got, I think there's a chance that they're feeling optimistic about Jalen Coker and what he was able to do late last year. I think that's a little ambitious to believe that he's going to be a significant player in that offense. Xavier Legette had moments last year, but Adam Thielen was talking like he might not be back. They might not want to pay him. And they just don't really have weapons. They don't have a good tight end. Like, they have a good run game. So the more you sit with the top of this board, and I know they have other needs. They need edge rusher. They need defensive line. They need defensive backs. They need everything. They're the Panthers. But I think you go out and you get a big ball winner where, Bryce Young is set up to succeed. I like that pick a lot, Kevin.
Yeah. It allows them also you could draft a tight end, maybe an offensive lineman, but you could focus the rest of the draft on defense really because you got a big weapon to help out your quarterback who, showed steps in the right direction at the end of the year, and getting him more weapons is better than not helping at all. So.
Yeah, I mean, the way I look at it is, now it's going to depend on Ted McMillan's grade. Like, it just depends on, like, he's falling down the board a little bit. Like, so it really comes down to, like, at this point, if he's sitting there and he kind of maybe has a great pro day and he's still sitting there at 8 and people have him as a wide receiver 1 top 10 pick, I look at it with Carolina. He's going to come down to that team build. Maybe they go defensive line. That was really where I was going to go. Like, you're going to take Stewart. You're going to take someone like Michael Williams there or whatever. Maybe they go inside out. Maybe that's going to be the way to build. Or, I mean, shoot, I guess they could have taken Tyler Warren as well. But I don't think they do that. I think just based on their build. So you got to give Bryce something, right? Bryce looked okay last year. But again, Christian talked about Jalen Coker, and I've talked about him because of, like, just from fantasy perspective. Like, hey, maybe he's a sleeper or a stash. But you got to remember his best game came on a broken play against Dallas where he had like a 70-yard touchdown catch, and it was against Dallas. And I don't know if anybody watched Dallas play last year. we were not good. We were not a good football team. So I think that is something to note too. Like when you're thinking of like, oh, could, and really Xavier Leggett and you, Christian and myself, we weren't big last year on Xavier Leggett. I thought he was okay, but his best moments have come from press conferences. That's not a sign that you're dead pretty well as a football player last year. Like I like him, but I don't know. I'm kind of out on those weapons.
Sick accent though.
Great accent.
We love that accent.
And he eats the hell out of rodents. But outside of that, like, I don't know, like, I don't know what's going on down there. Like, I think you need to get Bryce some of those weapons there. All right, let's move on before I get canceled. So at 9, we got Shamir Stewart, edge. He went to the Saints. At 10, Will Campbell, offensive tackle, goes to the Bears. Bears get some offensive line help there. Michael Williams at 11 to the Atlanta Falcons. At 12, Emeka Egbuka going to the Cowboys. Wide receiver at Ohio State. 13, Kelvin Banks. That's gonna Miami fans gonna love that. Offensive tackle out of Texas. 14, Tyler Warren to the Colts. Pretty chalk at this point for the Colts. Trying to take a Tyler Warren there. Tight end out of Penn State. Armand Mimbu out of offensive tackle out of Missouri. He goes to the 49ers. And at 16, Josh Simmons, offensive tackle out of Ohio State. He goes to the Cardinals here. A lot of fun here. I think Stewart is the one that's just going to be the most frustrating player. I was surprised Christian took him because he doesn't like Stewart here. But everything, measurables, RAS, all that stuff pops. Like he had a great, when you're thinking of what he was able to do. I think the question is, like, why wasn't he able to produce? And that's going to be the number one factor out there from college.
Well, that doesn't matter to the Saints. They pick only on upside. So it fits perfectly, actually.
Well, I'm realistic. I have him graded super low. I don't see it. I think while he tested as a super explosive athlete, I think there were times where he was super explosive on film, and then there were times where his first step was just not good enough when you're only winning with athleticism. So I am not a fan, but I'm realistic, and I know that the elite athletes that have a 10.00 relative athletic score are going to get drafted super high. He's not much different than Trayvon Walker, who has to give him credit, and I was lower on Trayvon Walker as well. It took him like 3 years, but he's a good player now. I think that's the Shamar Stewart path. It's going to take a while, but the Saints have a while because they're not in contention anytime soon. So that's kind of why. And same thing, like I've mocked him to Carolina at times too. Like it makes sense when you don't have a team that needs to win now. It's a really good developmental pick. And, the Saints sometimes make weird draft picks, especially at edge rusher. So that's why I went there.
All right. Anything else in terms of Stewart? Let's move on. Let's go to, I think, the interesting one, Emeka Egbuka. Sitting there at wide receiver 2 for the Dallas Cowboys there with CeeDee Lamb. I think that's a fun pick. Everybody's kind of been going running back, but with Genty off the board, maybe they don't feel like, even though we saw some Amari and Hampton love out there. I've been seeing some Amari and Hampton running back one love there. I know some people have mocked him there. Was it Jeremiah that mocked him there, or who was it? Who mocked him?
I think it was McShay. Maybe.
Yeah. One of those guys mocked him over to Dallas. Then we started seeing everybody do it there. I think that's a fun pick. And I think that, wide receiver 2 off the board for Emeka is in play. I know Matthew Golden is out there. A lot of people will be talking about Matthew Golden there. I'm sure Christian has the Matthew Golden take at some point in terms of like what we're seeing out there. But I love the Emeka pick. I think he'd fit great in the slot. I think CD could get moved inside out. I think Emeka can also play outside a little bit. I think there's some chances in there. I think it'd be a fun offense. And I think they're going to throw the hell out of the ball in this offense too. So that Emeka pick, I thought was a good pick for the Dallas Cowboys. It fits their needs. Randy or Christian took him there. Is that what you were kind of thinking with that pick?
Yeah. And I traded up in front of Dallas to take an edge rusher because I think edge is definitely in play for them. But with 3 coming off the board before Dallas, it made it kind of a little bit easier for me. I like a few of these edge rushers quite a bit. There's been some buzz on, some off-field stuff for a couple of them. And it seems like maybe this edge class is a little more hit or miss for a lot of NFL teams. So with the Falcons reportedly, so the Falcons are moving more to a 4-3 defensive line this year, or defensive front this year, but they're going to play multiple. Michael can do both, and so I wanted to make sure I got up to get him because I think the Cowboys would be quite intrigued with Michael as well. But then at 12 with Emeka, it's not a thing that we see a whole lot, them taking a wide receiver, but I can't remember what I was watching or I don't know if it was like ESPN or something, and they were like, oh no, it was NFL Network. Manti Te'o was just talking up Brandon Cooks and how impactful Brandon Cooks was for the Cowboys last year, because of all the stress that he takes off of CD. And while I don't agree with that assessment of Brandon Cooks and what his value was to the Cowboys, I do think there's some value in having a good second wide receiver. And the Cowboys haven't really had that since prime Michael Gallup, in my opinion. I think they've had a good
Prime
yeah,
Michael?
prime Michael Gallup, dude, 1,000 yards. He was good for like 2 years there. But I think Emeka fits what they're going to be trying to do as well. And I think that flexibility to move inside and out like CD does, that gives you a ton of different looks on offense, which I think the Cowboys are going to need because, quite frankly, their run game is not going to be good again, I don't think. I think they're going to take a running back once we get there, but I just don't see their running attack being anything special this year. So
No, the offense hasn't been the same since they traded Amari. So it's plain and simple. They've needed it to replace that position desperately. They've tried it with older vets and scrubs. It hasn't worked out. So get a top tier guy that's definitely going to be a locker room and effort guy, which is I think what this offense needs in Dallas.
Yeah, I just think that they're going to throw the ball more than people think, and I think they're going to need a guy like that. My other pick, this is interesting. Let's talk about the battle for tackles here. So we got Will Campbell going at 10 to the Bears, which I think is a need, right? Calvin Banks, who you say guard, the Calvin Banks guard-ish, maybe both.
He's still such a tweener for me, and same with Will Campbell, honestly. And with Miami needing both desperately, you pick one that's kind of gives you the flexibility. It seems to be that's the type of lineman they like anyways.
Okay. And then we have, I mispronounced the name, didn't I? Arman, how do you say his last name again?
Armin Membu. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, right. Close. Yeah, Randy laughed at me. Membu. And then we got Josh Simmons there. I think it's interesting because we talked about how, like, when we first put into it, obviously we're not seeing any of the top 5 guys, right? So we're not seeing that offensive tackle, that legit top 5, Will Alt type or Joe Alt. I don't know what the hell I just did there. Joe Alt type lineman there. But so if you're going off the board here, are you comfortable with this line of Christian, or where are you at with your tackles right now? You had Simmons. I know you talked about you like Simmons a lot.
I do like Simmons a lot, but ironically, so Will Campbell had a kind of bad, I would call it a bad combine. And I think the on-field stuff was really, really good. The testing was really, really good. I mean, he's like a 9.86 relative athletic score, but the arm length is going to be a problem for some folks. I think it's crap. So he's my tackle 1 now. He's a little more athletic than even I thought. I think I had him at like 8.75 projected, and he's 9.86. So he is my tackle 1. Then I've got Josh Simmons, then Banks, then Membu. Okay. So, I mean, we're close here. And really, they are all within, we talk about our grading scale. It's out of 100. My highest of those 4 is 80.96, and my lowest is 79.48. So this tackle group is so clustered together that I feel like it's so team-specific, team-oriented that I won't be shocked if Josh Simmons is the first tackle off the board, because his arm length was a little bit longer than Will Campbell, even though every single tackle in this class has short arms. So,
yeah, and I will say again, this mock was done before all these trades the last couple of days, so I still think Will Campbell gives you the best option of any of these offensive linemen to fully solidify this line. Jonah Jackson can play center. He has for Ben Johnson, so I think it's a smart play here. And this way, you can pretty much guarantee that either Will Campbell or Braxton Jones will be your left tackle. The other one's going to kick over to right guard. And that's just how it's going to work out. And Jonah Jackson's going into center. And that's just what we're doing. Or, you're getting rid of Braxton Jones. It's one of the two. But
I was just going to say, or Will Campbell can maybe play center. And
there's a chance he plays a bit high.
He does.
So I do have a little bit of concerns with him playing guard simply because of how he sits. But I think he sits like that because he can at tackle. I think he would easily be able to fix it. Going interior, I think he'd be one of the best guards in the class easily, like at the end of this, since all these tackles are guards apparently. So I just think I still think Will Campbell's the best offensive lineman in the draft. And I think if you're a team that is clearly so focused on making sure you have one of the top 10 offensive lines and have one for the future too, not just trading for vets, I think getting a guy like Will Campbell makes a ton of sense. And your line is completely set for the next couple of years, and you can spend the next your 2 draft picks in the second round, the rest of this draft, the rest of the next, fixing everything else to make this the most successful team possible for Ben Johnson and Caleb Williams.
Yeah, no, and when you're looking at just these guys that took tackles, I think Bears, like Randy just mentioned, we got to have that. The Dolphins, they need offensive line. Like, just get them some type of offensive line out there for Tua. I think the San Francisco could use a tackle, and I think that they definitely can use an offensive line help. And I would be shocked the Cardinals don't take an offensive lineman. It's either that or defensive line if they feel like, hey, that there's a tier right there or whatever. But I really feel like they look at that offense and they want to run the football. They could not do that very well last year. I know Connor did okay, but they need to protect Kyler Murray too if they're still going to go there. They feel in a weird tweener place with him because the money they gave to him. So I'm definitely thinking it's going to go there. All right, moving on. We're going next pick. All right, let's go to next ones. 17 to 24 here. At 17, the Bengals selected Walter Nolan, Ole Miss defensive tackle. Jalen Walker went over to the Seattle Seahawks as the edge from Georgia. Mike Green goes to Tampa Bay. I thought he was going to fall with the Eagles, but he did not. So Mike Green edge out of Marshall. There's been some talk about him maybe slipping for character concerns, other off the field stuff, which I think is legit. I think is a real thing. So we'll see kind of how his draft stock happens over the next couple, basically month and a half. Colston Loveland, tight end out of Michigan, goes 20 to the Denver Broncos. 21, Jedi Barron, cornerback out of Texas, goes to Steelers. Such a Steelers pick too. Just a Steelers through and through. 22, James Pierce Jr. out of Tennessee. He's going to the Chargers to help kind of replenish Bosa. They cut Bosa there. So going for that edge at 22. Siobhan Rebel Jr. out of East Carolina, cornerback, going to the Green Bay Packers. They need a lot of help in that secondary. And then our next running back off the board, running back to Amarian Hampton to the Minnesota Vikings, running back out of North Carolina there. I think there's a lot of fun picks in there, a lot of value picks that you're seeing. I do want to kind of let's just go to Tampa Bay, because I think the Mike Green pick is good for them. Now, he might slip a little bit, but intangibles are there for them, and they really do look like they need an edge. How did you feel about that pick, Randy?
I think Mike Green's a phenomenal edge, and I think he's proven himself in every aspect. Apparently we're dinging more on some off-field stuff. We'll get that sorted out, but I think he's very clearly a dominant player. He's going to be a big force. They need edge help desperately. They need linebacker help. They need DB help. So for me, it was between Mike Green and Jade Barron. I think Tampa Bay, whichever one they like, it's a home run pick either way. But getting a dominant edge rusher versus a bit of a versatile DB, I'm almost hesitant to put cornerback for Jedi Barron because he really displays everything, even linebacker. So
he's a stud.
He's a better version of Isaiah Simmons. He's what we wanted Isaiah Simmons to be. So I just think Mike Green can actually be a little bit of a game changer for him, give them that speed rusher as well, which they haven't had in a long time. That wasn't way overpaid and way old.
Yeah, this whole group is full of potential off-field concerns. By the way, I just noticed Walter Nolan sitting there at 17. There's some rumors about that. Mike Green at 19. 22, James Pierce Jr. had a weird combine. In the days leading up to the combine, there were some rumors about his work ethic and attitude and things like that. And then I read an article of someone who was like doing stock up, stock down, and they acknowledged that was pre-combine, and then they said, and he didn't really do much to change that at the combine. So he's way stocked down, but the talent of these dudes might supersede that. So we've mocked him here now. I think some of that stuff from the combine came out as we were doing this, but there's a chance that the teams are like, yeah, man, we'll take a risk. We'll take one of these, maybe high variance, but high potential guys too. I love Mike Green. Randy, did you ever consider Jihad Campbell for them at all?
No, not really.
Okay.
I just 19 feels a bit rich for me. Just because I think they can definitely get someone day 2, day 3 to help out. And I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but they had a linebacker last year that they were pegging to take over the room, and he got hurt most of the year. And they just re-signed their legend at linebacker. So I think it makes complete sense to hope that the linebacking core can come back healthy and just add depth later. And I think DB and edge are their biggest needs by far. Maybe wide receiver depending on free agency, but we'll see.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
No, I think that is true. I think a lot of these guys have question marks. That's fun. I think that's a fun kind of like, hey, even like there's been I love the Loveland to Broncos pick because I do think that they're looking at like where they're going to go there, but he's got question marks too. I think that there's question marks about the injury that happened. He had some weird off the field, infield stuff too. Like he's got a little. I don't know. As a Michigan guy, I loved him, but he's got a little punk-ish in him. Like when after the Michigan State games, like there's some things that he's done where he's got a little edge, which edge is good, but not too much edge. And Sean Payton will run that ass like immediately. Like that's the thing. Like I think they would do well together, but there could be a mesh issues there with whatever kind of depends there. We did see some James Pierce droppage. So I've seen him talk about like maybe he's dropping as well, off-field things as well there. And I think those are all interesting. So Randy took him too. He's just taking edges all throughout this group. Obviously they need to replace Bosa, right? I mean, that's going to be the big thing now. So do we think that they're going to, because we've been penciling in maybe running back in that spot, tight end in that spot. Do you think edge is their biggest need right now until free agency, obviously?
Yeah, because they're also losing Khalil Mack or letting him go. So I picked James Pierce as the Khalil Mack replacement style. I wasn't sure if they're going to get rid of Bosa or not. I think they wanted two different types of edges, and this is taking one of those back. I think they'll obviously try and get one of those in free agency so they're not desperate for the position.
Yeah.
They've already said they're not bringing back Gus Edwards. I think that's a sign that they could probably try and bring back JK, but they're definitely going to draft a running back. And, the tight ends are off the board, the top ones that really make sense for him here. Wide receiver was a iffy one. I wasn't quite sure. It sounds like they are in the market for like DK Metcalf, possibly Devontae Adams. So I'm not sure if they want another young guy in the room or they want a veteran to pair with Ladd McConkey. But this is what we saw last year. They took the best player on the board early. And then, at about this point of the draft, when it's no longer maybe first-round grades, they took the best player they had at a position of need, and that was Ladd McConkey. I think James Pierce right now with the edge on the board, I think it was the best player they could pick.
I physically recoiled when you said Ladd McConkey and didn't even mention Quentin Johnston. What the hell, Randy?
Because they didn't draft him last year. But
no, edge is by far their biggest need. Now they might address it a little bit in free agency, and of course this mock's going to be dated within like 5 days, 4 days by the time it's out because free agency starts, I believe, on the 12th.
Yeah.
So,
I think Wednesday.
Yeah. I think tampering
Monday.
period is Monday, and then like official is Wednesday. So, so we'll see. We'll see what happens. The funniest thing we just talked about question marks. Barron might have some outside corner question marks. Jalen Walker has size question marks. Siobhan Revel has injury question marks. Little things. Omarion Hampton is the only player on this graphic, if you're watching on YouTube, that really doesn't have a question mark. I don't have too many question marks about him. Minnesota taking a running back is not a thing that is welcomed all that much. I think they have so many needs on defense, but there's a chance that they don't bring Aaron Jones back. He had a pretty down year last year. They don't have much behind him. Cam Akers could come back, but I just don't see the value in paying Cam Akers when you've got a running back class that looks like this. If Omarion Hampton is somehow still on the board at 24, because from what we're hearing, he's going to be a top 20 pick. If he's on the board, I think Minnesota would be intrigued because I think if they do move on from Sam Darnold, they need to be able to run the ball with JJ McCarthy as he continues to develop and, get the NFL speed under him. So that's why I kind of went with Hampton here. The only player without question marks, and he kind of does have can he wiggle? I don't know, but it doesn't matter. He's an elite athlete.
Can he wiggle? I love it. We're full in this. Can he wiggle there? I think what comes down to it with the Vikings is like their lack of capital in this class. Like, what do they feel like? Back. Yeah, they're gonna because I think right now, right? They only have 3 picks right now. 4,
I believe.
Yeah, but they're gonna get some. I'm sure.
Me and Christian talked about it after the fact, and there's a pick that's made in about like 10 picks that I talked about after the fact that maybe we could work out a trade, and I traded up and we just dropped it. So we kind of just stopped talking about it after a bit. But I think they are looking to trade back. But again, this is definitely a draft class that people are going to love, guys, because it sounds like a lot of people like the Vikings that need capital are looking to trade back, but also teams that don't need capital are just like, well, if I could trade back, I will, but I just don't know a lot of it's going to happen because, like you said, this whole board has questions right here. So do you trade up for the question marks, or do you just sit and take the risk at the pick you have?
There's a lot of value in the cornerback spots here too. Thinking where Will Johnson goes compared to like Barron or Siobhan Revel. Like that's the question mark coming off the injury. So I think it's fun. I think that there's some good spots here as it kind of shifts down, and good teams are going to get great players. Like some of these teams are going to get someone fall in their laps. It's usually the Ravens. Usually the Ravens get a player fall in their laps. We'll kind of talk about what they got and their value there. But all right, so just to wrap up just this group so you guys know, Walter Nolan went at 17, Jalen Walker went at 18, Mike Green goes at 19, Colson Levin at 20, Jedi Barron at 21, James Pierce Jr. 22, 23 was Siobhan Revel Jr., and then 24 was Amarian Hampton. And then we're going to wrap up the first round here, kind of talking about this next group of guys. 25, Matthew Golden. Christian loves Matthew Golden, wide receiver out of Texas. He goes to the Texans. Interesting, though, because they just traded for Christian Kirk. So I don't know. Like, I don't think that necessarily means anything because Christian Kirk coming off the injury hasn't been amazing. Like when you think of like he's a target guy, but obviously his best year I think was 2023 or 2020. I think it was 2023, and really he's just been injured, right? So like that he did not live up to that contract there. 26 Luther Burden to the Rams. That's an interesting spot. Wide receiver out of Missouri. 27 Josh Conerly Jr. offensive tackle out of Oregon goes to the Ravens. 28 Gray Zabel, offensive lineman, North Dakota State, goes to the Lions. At 29, Nick Scorton, Texas A&M edge, goes to the Commanders. Jihad Campbell, linebacker out of Alabama, goes to the Buffalo Bills. Kenneth Grant, defensive tackle out of Michigan, falls a little bit in this mock, goes to the Kansas City Chiefs. And then Princely, thank you, edge out of Ole Miss, goes to the Eagles. And it's a total Eagles pick there. But let's talk about the wide receivers first. Matthew Golden, Luther Burden, kind of where they went there. Randy took Matthew Golden. I took Luther Burden to the Rams. Christian, which pick do you like better?
I like them both.
See, look at him hedging
I mean,
for his co-host right there.
The reason I like them both is because they both fit so well with so Matthew Golden kind of fills the Tank Dell role in that offense while Tank Dell is hurt.
Yeah.
In that I think he can be a vertical field stretching type of guy, but he gets open and he gets open pretty regularly. He's a little bit undersized, but elite speed. Tank Dell didn't really have elite speed, but he had elite agility and things like that. Golden would fill that role. So I think like the Kirk of it all doesn't matter a whole lot. Even if Kirk will be in the slot like Tank Dell, I think Golden fills the areas of the field that they need filled. In losing Tank Dell and Stephon Diggs probably won't be back. Luther Burden fits because the Rams reportedly are going to be moving on from Cooper Kupp. I still don't know if that's the case as of recording. Might happen while we're recording with how active the NFL has been this last week. But having a piece like that where you can get creative in a Sean McVay offense, whether that's getting him the ball on sweeps, whether that's getting him the ball on screens. Sean McVay, one of the things that we underrate about Sean McVay is he does an excellent job at getting his players the ball in space and letting them operate. He's done that with the tight ends quite a bit when he has good ones. I think Luther Burden kind of fills that role for them. I know they just re-signed Tutu Atwell for $10 million a year, which is absurd.
Steal.
Yeah,
for
sure.
Tutu.
Tutu stole money from the Rams, but I still think they have a need at wide receiver outside of Puka Nacua if they move on from Cooper Kupp. Now, if they don't, then they have an excess of wide receivers, and they just paid Tutu Atwell $10 million. So maybe this wouldn't be the pick, but in this case, I'm going at this offseason as if Cooper Kupp is elsewhere.
Yeah, that's what I made the pick for.
Yeah. I think Diggs is definitely gone for Houston, and I think you're right, Christian, that he can fill for this season. He can fill the Tank Dell role, and then once Tank Dell is back, he will actually fill the Diggs role because that's more of a receiver that he is, that kind of caliber, in my opinion, and stylistically opinion. You know, Diggs is an all-around receiver, at least at his prime, and could go deep. I think that's what Golden can give you at his peak as well. And that pairing, the Texans' offense is meant to have every receiver go everywhere. Nico is best in the slot and is dominant outside. I think it's a good idea to get somebody that can do both as well, especially when Kirk has been able to play outside, but his only real success has been being the only target or being in the slot, and a little bit of both in between. So I think that definitely does. I mean, they gave up a 7th round. I don't think he's really in their plans. He could be cut. So I think getting an actual talented upside makes a ton of sense. And same thing with Luther Burden. I think if you're getting rid of Cooper Kupp, that's because you can already see Puka has eclipsed him in the same role. And I think this gives you another weapon to not play in the Cooper Kupp type of role. You could take all the jet sweeps, like you said, the screen passes, and let Puka block for you. And this at least lets you not have to pay Tutu Atwell next year to be your speed guy.
Yeah.
What? So this the hardest pick for me when I was going through this, I had the Washington Commanders at 29 with both those wide receivers going up the board, and then the kind of the tackles. Like I look after Josh Cornley Jr., which was a great pick by Baltimore. I like that idea of them kind of landing that tackle, that guy that can really help them up front. After that, when you're looking at it, and even Gray's Abel went off the board, so you're just kind of staring, and you're like, all right, do I take Ursary? Do we look at Washington and say they need that? I mean, I could have went there. I kind of just took best player available, but it was gross because I don't really necessarily love Nick Scorton there. But with Washington, they have a lot of different needs. They might be that trade up. Maybe they have some extra capital, and I know they do. So maybe they move up and maybe go try to get a wide receiver ahead of it, depending on when they go. Because I do think, I know they got Debo, but I'm just not a Debo guy. So I think that they could still attack the wide receiver position. I do think that they could look there. Debo's a stopgap. Go get more weapons around Jaden Daniels if you really like a piece there. This could be also a trade back spot, maybe for that QB3, maybe for whatever team wants. I can see the Commanders moving if the board fell this way.
I mean, I think Scorton's a good pick. I think it gives you it's a safe pick. They need edge. They just obviously got rid of one of those stalwart D tackles. I think they're going to be reinvesting that money elsewhere. Obviously, that's going to Debo, but I think they're going to be looking to make some acquisitions elsewhere. And like you said, you could have picked wide receiver, 2 just went off the board. You're reaching for one then. And I think they traded for Debo Samuel to not have to reach for a receiver this year. I think they understood it was a desperate need for them. So I think it makes sense to go Scorton. I think if you would have went corner or maybe even safety, depending on if they bring back they really have a lot of 1-year rentals they did last year that all worked out really. So it's really on defense. So it's to see who they bring back, but it makes sense. This offense worked really well. You've already spent a pick to get the wide receiver. If a tackle you don't like is here, and I mean, you could have gone a guard too, I guess, but 2 just went off the board right in front of you. It's the same issue. I think going edge or corner was the smartest move, and Scorton was the pick. It makes sense to me because other than maybe Azari Thomas, I think that would be a good fit stylistically and with the actual coach. But otherwise, Scorton is going to be able to get the most out of this defense. He's going to play next to solid D tackles. You got decent secondary, decent linebacker. You're going to be a team that's probably ahead of most games.
Yeah, as much as Kevin's dubbed me a Trey Amos hater, I also think that kind of fits a little bit in that we think of Dan Quinn defenses when he was in Dallas. He always had a really good ball hawking corner. It sometimes burned him with all of the different, Jerome Bland, Trayvon Diggs, they led the league in picks under Dan Quinn, but they don't necessarily have that right now. So I'm curious as to how they kind of address that. But I like the Scorton pick. I think this is a player that's been a bit underrated. He's dropped, I think, 30 pounds from what he was listed his playing weight was, which I think is going to give him a little more speed around the edge, which I think is my main concern with him. He's got a great bag of pass rush moves. I think certainly the Commanders need help getting to the quarterback. I think that will help them maybe even more than reaching on a wide receiver here. In this case. And people talk about tackle for them. Andrew Wiley is their starter at right tackle. That's a problem, but they got some good play from, I forget the kid's name, the starting left tackle for them that they drafted in the 3rd round last year. Brandon, I think is his first name, but and I should know that. My apologies. But they got some really good play from him. I think he's going to be
Brandon Coleman.
So Brandon Coleman, they drafted day 2 and hit on it. So maybe they go with that same kind of direction for right tackle this year, where they're like, we feel pretty confident that we can find a gem here on day 2. So I like that pick.
Yeah, I mean, for what it's worth, like Dante Fowler was a starter at edge for them last year. Him and Jalen Holmes are free agents. They pretty much just have Dorrance Armstrong at the edge room right now. And they drafted Jerzon Newton to really take over that other D tackle role as more of a penetrator instead of, two, power D tackles and run stoppers. So I think this helps reshape the team. And I think I would kind of comp him to Dorrance Armstrong too, when you're actually going down to it, a guy that's a bit of a tweener that can really set the edge for you. I think that definitely means they need to get some juice and more of a speed rusher in the room, but I think this really sets it kind of along the lines of what the Bengals defensive line has been in the past, where you just have 2 strong, edge rushers that can get to the quarterback, but they're really going to set the edge for you.
Yeah. All right. Anything else? Wrap up this first round.
Kenneth Grant shouldn't be allowed to be a Chief, but if he's there, it's such a home run pick. They traded away Joe Thuney. They tagged and probably going to extend Trey Smith. They're going to re-sign Nick Bolton. They might have to let Jordan Reed leave, or Jordan Reed, Justin Reed. Yeah, thank you. It didn't sound right off the tongue, but they're losing most of their D tackle room, if not all, besides Chris Jones. I think somehow they're going to draft probably 2 D tackles in this class, and getting what some people could argue is the best one at 31 is quite ridiculous.
Yeah. Let me justify the Jahad Campbell pick too. I know Bills fans are pretty locked into defensive line or edge. I made this pick before the Terrell Bernard extension for what it's worth, but it doesn't matter. Matt Milano is getting old. I know he's still got some juice. We saw it down the stretch, but I think Jahad Campbell fits the Matt Milano role a little bit more than even the Terrell Bernard role. So this was just a case of by far the best player available, in my opinion. I have him rated inside the top 10. And so I kind of went in that direction as the Matt Milano replacement down the stretch. If he's available, I think maybe because this linebacker class outside of Campbell isn't my favorite. I like Schlesinger a little bit. But yeah, that was tough. That was real tough. I sound like Kevin there. He's good. I like him a little bit, but Jahad Campbell to me is a different type of linebacker. And I don't really classify Jalen Walker as a linebacker either. So I think there's a chance that some team a little bit earlier takes him, which is why we don't see this pick too much. But I think linebackers kind of a sneaky need as far as like down the road for the Bills.
I mean, unless they have a wide receiver they really like, you could also say maybe like an interior offensive lineman. They got to work out James Cook and his contract, but they just need to spend. I mean, they completely got rid of pretty much every veteran possible on this defensive line. They have to figure out what they're doing with Rousseau. Like, they have a lot of question marks they need to do. They're letting Milano figure it out this year, probably the last year possible. They shouldn't touch the contract because it was messed with their money. So I think getting the guy that can just take over and just be a rotational guy to make a strength of strength actually in the defense, which isn't a strength currently, I think is a smart move. And they need to pretty much spend every pick in the first 2 rounds, which is 3 picks, on defense. I think that's the smartest move, especially unless there's a wide receiver that makes a ton of sense. I think the only thing that makes sense for them is to try and trade for a veteran wide receiver or a veteran edge. It just has to make sense money-wise.
Yeah. My favorite, culture pick here is Gray Zabel to the Lions, because that just fits everything Dan Campbell wants to do, that staff wants to do. Like, that is just they're just going to just tear people up there. Like, that just fits them perfectly.
Yeah. Well, and they brought in Kevin Zeitler. It was a great move as a vet, but he is much older. Ragnow's getting older. Graham Glasnow's getting older. Even Taylor Decker's getting older. It makes so much sense to get a guy that can play every position for you. And again, edge rushers off the board, corner off the board. Like, every team need you could say for the Lions has really been attacked, even unless they're going Jahad Campbell. But they've spent first round for Jack Campbell. They have Alonso. Like, they have their linebackers they like. They just need depth of position. They need depth all over the defense. So why not take a guy that is going to make sure you are good at offensive line and screw it, back to just picking defense the rest of the draft.
Yep.
All right. Well, that wraps up the first round. A lot of fun here. A lot of different kind of pieces. Like when you're thinking of like where they went, I think it's, free agency is going to definitely just destroy some of these things, but it's still fun to kind of look at there. And we had a lot of guys drop that maybe didn't. Kenneth Grant going to Chiefs is a fun pick there. Jahad Campbell going to the Buffalo Bills, especially down here at the bottom here. So just kind of wrap it up. Some of our favorite picks. Where the quarterbacks go, I just mentioned that. Cleveland took their quarterback in Cam Ward at 2. Then Shador went to the Jets. And I think that is a fun conversation that we had in terms of how would that look for them. Outside of that, that was it. The only quarterbacks there. Running backs, when you're thinking of the kind of the top 2 guys, Shador goes to the Raiders, and then we have Amari in Hampton. But we are going to go deeper here. So if you're listening on the podcast, obviously just stay listening to us. If you're only on YouTube, though, go check out the pod. We are going to go deeper into the second round, do a 2-round mock, kind of talk about some of the deeper names that you need to hear about, but also what your favorite team likes there. Like everybody kind of knows those first round. You see first round mocks all the time, but we are going to go in the second round for our first 2-round mock draft here. So go check us out on the podcast. If you're on YouTube right now, hit that like and subscribe button. What picks don't you like? What picks do you like? Kind of let's debate. Let's have some fun in the comments. As long as you're respectful, we just stay there because we can get a little sarcastic back if you're going to be sarcastic there. So let us know. Let us know in the comments what you think. We appreciate you guys tuning in.